be able to just find oneself stopping. And just being that, a being that is effortless, meaning the absence of an uncomfortableness, a resting with nowhere to go and nothing to do and nothing to fix, just a resting in what we are, being with ourselves, being nothing more than what is here now. Which is not an effort, or isn't to be found by making effort. This is not to say that practice as part of a seeking is not valid. That's different effort. You can make effort to find something, then happens. But what ends up happening is not happening because of effort in that moment. So the seeking can happen for years, and we could say that was effort to some extent. There were things being done or activities, focus on, I don't know, reading, thinking, listening. And so we can call that effort to some extent. Resting and being might be a result of that sort of effort, but in the moment when it happens, it isn't because of effort to make it happen in that moment. It's the absence of the presence of effort, the absence of the presence of effort. So no effort. It is rest. It's why it has been referred to as the natural state. Like when everything settles down, what is left is the natural state. And what is it that covers up the natural state? So that's a way of describing what covers up the natural state, what is the alternative, or what is there when the natural state is not there. And it's a form of movement. What sort of movement? The movement of the thinking mind. And so the settling back is a settling of the thinking mind. It's like, okay, you can slow down, slow down, slow down, stop. And so the stop, isn't really an instruction. It's more like things slow down, slow down, slow down. And then by default, there is no more movement if it slows down enough. So stop is something that happens. when we are focused on looking outward, outward essentially means looking out into the world of form from the point of view of form. Form looking out into form, which really means a complete absorption into the aspect of the manifestation or the aspect of the experience that is circumstance, that is time-bound, space-bound causality, that A leads to A leads to B leads to C. It is essentially forcing us into a thinking about here and there, about now and then, about now and what will be. And we don't even know that we are looking outward, because that's how we have developed. It sneaks up on us, just as a result of us having been born and then experiencing life day after day after day. So in the first week and then second week, third week of life, all this experience, sensory experiences being absorbed, and neural networks are being formed, conclusions are being formed based on repetitive senses and patterns being recognized and locked away. And I dare to say that in the first weeks, months of existence, the baby has no awareness of its body or the body as being maybe even there. I'd say there must be sensory experience arising. There would be sensory experience arising, but it hasn't sunk in that it is experience relative to a body. So what I mean by that is that if someone were to clap their hands, the baby would hear clapping just like it might be seeing, aware of all of the visual aspect, but it might not hear the clapping relative to the body object, because it hasn't the picture hasn't formed, hasn't been locked away yet in the mind, in the thinking, that what is aware is somehow linked to the body. And then at some point, whether it's weeks, months, a year into life, I suspect it's in the first weeks, months, life starts to be observed relative to the body. So the brain has picked up that the body is always here. The visual of the body, it says, oh, well, certain things are not always here, but it starts to recognize the things that don't seem to go away. And then it might see a correlation between this object that it's seeing, touching something, sense arising. And over time, something gets locked away, something gets the identification, it becomes a sense of who we are. That's what gets formed, is this sense of who we are. And then there is a looking out from that place and interacting with the world from that place. So it didn't exist, and then it existed because it happened. It's just the natural form of development. It's unavoidable unless the baby was brought up in a different sensory way. It seems like this is what forms as we're exposed to life experience. And so from there, we interact with the world in a way that is described as looking outward, looking out into experience. We looking out into our interactions with the other. Essentially, it all becomes about outcomes. So we're encouraged to turn inwards. To maybe realize, bump into something that has been overlooked because of that outward looking. Turning inwards is a turning away from form, turning away from circumstance and outcomes and experience, and looking at what is deeper down than that, what the background is, the bit that is unchanging. So this question in non-dual teachings, in particular in Advaita, who am I? Who am I? Is a very profound question. It's, you could say, the basis of self-inquiry. So self-inquiry, an inquiry into the self. You could say an inquiry into who am I? Now, if you pulled someone off the street and asked them, who are you? They wouldn't hesitate to give you an answer, or they actually would find the question quite odd, like, why would you ask such a strange, isn't it self-evident? Would be probably their experience. No question about who am I. No doubt, no uncertainty. Why? Because the sense of who they are is very much there. Not necessarily in a way that would be described as knowing the true self. But the reason that they might think, what an odd question, is because a very specific image or sense of who they are does exist. So this question, who am I, becomes a profound question when we start realizing that maybe we don't know who we are really. We start realizing that maybe how I know myself is illusory or misguided or more limited than can be the case. And so in an attempt to point at a deeper aspect of ourself that has been overlooked, wisdom teachings will generally try and describe or point out those aspects that are what you are not. One of the most useful pointers as to what you are not is all of the things that change. All of the things that come and go. All of the things that are temporary and impermanent. Why is that a useful pointer? Because it's quite general. It's a general description. And it then allows the seeker to start observing the many aspects that they may have assumed that they are, and see if they fit into that category of that which changes. So self-inquiry needs to be exactly an inquiry into self by oneself. So it's not much use getting answers, being given answers, and then holding those answers and feeling like I've done self-inquiry because I have all these answers. The answers that we get are essentially pointers. And what does that mean? It means they're not meant to be taken as answers, but they are answers that you have to confirm for yourself, answers that are the important, essentially pointing us to the important things to look at, the important questions. So the seeker needs to contemplate, ask, find out, okay, so if I run with the pointer, that what I am is not anything that changes. What does that mean? What am I not? So one of the most important things for us to see that we are not is the body and the thinking and emotions. Now they sound like three answers. You are not the body, you are not the thinking, you are not the emotions. You are not the speaking. You are not the listening. But they're pointers. Pointers for essentially an investigation for yourself around the question, am I the speaking? Am I the listening? Am I the thinking? When there is this identification with those things that are always changing, the body, the feelings, the emotions, the thinking, there's no solid ground on which to rest, to be grounded into. The thinking, the feelings are usually all about a subject that is assumed to be the physical, that is at threat, in danger while in life. Now, if that turns out not to be what we are at our core, and if there is identification with the body, identification with all the thoughts about the body, all of the feelings about the body, all of the emotions towards the other because of what they have done to the body, if it turns out that in reality we are not that, then while that identification with the body is happening, there is a not knowing oneself. There is a misunderstanding. So turning inwards is important, and at first it's done, in my opinion, with the closing of one's eyes. Now, that's by no means enough to break the identification with how we have known ourselves for 20, 40, 60, 80 years. But it's a start. It's not in and of itself enough, because habitual thinking can and usually does exist and will persist and continue even when, if not especially when, one's eyes are closed. But if there's an interest in knowing oneself prior to form, prior to the world, then closing eyes is a way in which a large part of the world of form instantly disappears. Now, if we don't recognize that that has happened, then the fact that the world of form has in fact disappeared is overlooked. And the thinking will essentially superimpose thoughts about the world of form in a way that will keep the world of form alive and prevent us from diving deeper, feeling deeper, recognizing what is beneath the world of form. So if with one's eyes closed, there is a bringing of attention to what we might still be referring to or feeling as the back of the eyebrow or eyelids. If attention is brought there and there is looking into what the thinking might still be assuming is the back of the eyelids, and there is just an awareness of that, it might open up, the space might open up in a way where you realize there is awareness of a vast open space that is it's a spaceless space. It isn't a space defined by objects. And that space is where the world of form used to arise, where it used to exist. And it's not there anymore. The world of form is not there. And there may well be a residual sense of the body, a residual sense of who we have known ourselves for years that is superimposing itself in the meditation experience. The more we realize that that sense of self may actually be being created by thought, memory, assumptions, vague sensations, and when put together with the idea that has formed about who we are, is creating a persistent sense that the body is still here. So the more that awareness can, or attention focuses on this vast open space and is aware of all of the objects that do still exist in that space, maybe some sound, some sensation that we would have automatically, subconsciously labeled as your thigh on a chair, maybe. And so in that subconscious thinking, what exists in the meditation is the notion of a thigh in a chair, which then brings into existence a world of form that is outside of you. And what all of that does is it prevents an appreciation for the formless that exists prior to or before the world of form is imposed on it. So to the extent that we can start to recognize that these thoughts about what is happening right now, about where we are, who we are, may not be accurate. They are superimposing what we have learned in the past onto the present moment. So that sensation, when it isn't labeled and isn't related to as if it is definitely what we assume it is, can then be felt as just an indistinct sensation. You might appreciate that what is related to as leg touching a chair is much less distinct when there is just awareness of that sensation without defining it intellectually. It's important to introduce the notion of awareness as quite possibly being something that is not of the world of form, but prior to the world of form. Awareness may well be more fundamentally real than the world of form. And it is awareness that is aware of the absence of the form. It is awareness that is aware of the presence of the form in what we might call our ordinary daily living experience. See what happens from the point of birth or conception is that what is registered is the world of form, and the absence of form is not at all registered as significant. What that means is that there is a consistent and unbroken registering of the world of form. Now, that's not to say there aren't breaks in the experience of form. Deep sleep each night is essentially a break in the experience of form, not dream. Dream is still a form of experience of form. When the daily living experience is not there and dream is not there, then that is the absence of form. When I'm talking about form, it's not just physical form, but you might start to see various intangible objects as form, like thoughts and emotions. Some of the senses, taste, sound. So the introduction of the notion of deep sleep is very important at creating a contrast between form and the absence of form, or experience and the absence of experience. And we're sometimes told that in deep sleep, awareness persists. Awareness is the background that is unchanging. It is that which prevails throughout the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. Awareness, consciousness is the real, the true, the unchanging. And in meditation, that background of awareness, the fourth state, turiya, that which is aware of the changing first, second, and third state. The first state is the waking state, the second state is the dream state, and the third state is deep sleep. Turiya is known as the fourth state, that which transcends the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. Meditation is an opportunity for the world of form to slow down, to start to dissolve, and for that background of awareness to become aware of itself. That's the turning inward that is encouraged. And as that appreciation for that awareness that we are, that is the background of everything that comes and goes, as that strengthens, as we know ourselves more and more as that formless awareness, the unchanging awareness that doesn't think, it doesn't feel, it doesn't speak, it doesn't move, it doesn't act, it doesn't come and go. It is that which is aware of everything that is happening, as an appreciation of our true nature being that awareness, as that deepens and stabilizes. Then there is the potential for that stabilization to exist when one's eyes are opened, which is just another way of saying when the experience changes from a world or an experience where the world of form is not there to where the world of form exists. So when one's eyes are open, which, as I said, is just another way of saying when the world of form reappears, there is the potential to remain grounded in knowing oneself as the awareness that is the background of everything that happens. And it's being grounded in that aspect of life that allows for a stillness, a quietness, a groundedness, an unmovingness to be there. From that place, the thinking mind that is concerned about so much about what is happening tends to quieten down. And in the meantime, if the thinking mind is still got a lot of momentum behind it, and it still happens. There can be a witnessing from that place of the thinking mind in action. And the knowing that what we really are is that which is aware of everything that comes and goes, including in that moment the thinking mind. So if you find the thinking mind functioning in a way that is concerned about what you did, what the other did, about the actions that are taking place in life, and there is complete identification with that thinking, meaning no witnessing of that thinking, but a complete involvement in the thinking. Maybe a thought might arise while that thinking is happening that says, this is not what I am. Like, this is the not knowing of who I am. That thought might in fact be enough to inspire a movement, a dropping into that deeper aspect of oneself. Now that movement into being is something that just may not be available for some people ever. Or as a seeker, you might find that it is sometimes available, but sometimes not. And even when it's available, it seems like, oh, I dropped into being. If we start appreciating the times when the dropping into being doesn't happen, we then might conclude maybe when it happens, it's not because I do it, but rather because it happens. A bit like tossing a coin and calling heads. And when heads comes up, we may be confused and say, oh, it came up because I made it happen. But if there's a bit more clarity, we might realize I tossed the coin, called heads, and it just happened to land on heads, which doesn't mean it landed on heads because I called heads or because I made it happen. So in the same way, when it doesn't happen, we can maybe find an attitude towards that accepts, in the same way as we might accept I called heads and tails came up, or I called tails and heads came up. That dropping into being is not something that we can control, not something that is always going to happen. And the more of that attitude that's there, which is really an attitude of surrender, it's an attitude of realizing that the notion of control might actually have been a misinterpretation of the life that is just unfolding outside of our control. And that awareness that is the background its function is to be aware. So witnessing is not something that the body does. Witnessing doesn't imply a witness. It does if we hear it according to the language mindset that has been put in place along with the outward looking perspective. Then we say, well, if you talk about witnessing, there must be the witness. In the context of awareness witnessing, we will appreciate at some point, there will be an appreciation that witnessing is the very function of that which we are. That what we are is witnessing. That what we are is nothing more than witnessing without a witness. And it's right here and now, beyond the identification with the body. This awareness, this witnessing is aware not through the senses. It is more fundamental than the world of form, and the senses are part of the world of form. So I encourage there to be a listening, not with the aim of trying to achieve something, but rather simply allowing a witnessing of what is happening, including and especially those aspects of what is happening that have been held dearly as what I am. The thinking is a happening. It is an object arising in that awareness, recognized by that awareness, and ultimately made and not separate from that awareness. The body, too, is an object arising in awareness, witnessed by awareness, made of awareness, not separate from awareness. All there is awareness. aware of itself.